A man reported his girlfriend missing and then he was found dead. On the 21st of May this year, police got a concerning phone call. The call came from Matthew Poole. He was reporting his girlfriend, 38-year-old Ashley Karigian, missing. He told officers he hadn't seen her for a week and was starting to get worried. She was last officially seen alive on the 14th of May. Now, this was strange for her to just disappear because she was actually the mother to an 11-year-old girl called Delilah. Police began looking into the whereabouts of the missing woman and 2 days later showed up at a property in Hawaii. When officers arrived at Matthew's home, they heard a loud bang. They then discovered his body. He appeared to have unalived himself as they entered. Now, evidence from that property then led them to a vacant, undeveloped property. It was there that they made a heartbreaking discovery. They found a body, quote, in advanced stages of decomposition, end quote, at 7 p.m. that night. The body was later determined as Ashley. She had passed away from a gunshot wound to the head. Police are considering the double killing a murder and then self-unaliving.
I also remember seeing another video from 2017 in Jalisco of a Jesus Christ statue moving in the middle of La Misa. Saw it? It's quick, it's in the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, like I said, I don't know how people want to take that kind of like a miracle in a way.
Yeah.
Or other people, you know, say it's like supernatural, creepy thing. It is paranormal, though.
Of course, yeah.
At the end of the day, bro, because if you see a statue or anything that's not human move, it gives you a little bit like of a...
Catches you off guard.
But what it reminded me of was a movie.
Oh, okay.
It's a very, very old movie. It's a vintage movie that I watched as a kid. It's called Marcelino Pan y Vino.
I've never seen that.
So what the movie is basic about is this little boy, he's an orphan. His name is Marcelino, right? He gets taken into this monastery with all the Catholic and religious monks. And obviously he's a kid, bro. So very mischievous. And one day he sneaks into the attic of the monastery.
Okay.
And he sees a giant crucifix of Jesus. And he starts talking to the statue. And eventually, over time of the movie, the statue starts talking back to him.
What the fuck?
Having regular conversation with him, saying like you shouldn't be bad and stuff. At the end of the movie.
Okay, so did Mr. Beast go to an Illuminati meeting? So Mr. Beast was recently on a podcast when he said this.
Not much I can say, but there's just like this super exclusive event with just all these really rich and famous people.
Yeah,
and I just did not belong there at the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was just one of them. And,
How'd you get invited to that event? Island in the Bahamas?
Well, I think it was. It was like I remember pulling. I just can't say too much, but I just remember pulling up, and there's like dozens of guys with just like assault and stuff, and I was like, oh, it's like that high level of an event. And and he just was like, so I ended up talking up there. So it's like, I don't even know how to put into words. Like everyone there was either like ultra famous or just like a billionaire. They're like it was crazy having all those people in that room. And then at dinner, they just pair you up with random people, so you meet new people, and it was the one at the table, and we just.
So yeah, after hearing Mr. Beast talk about it and say it, do you think he went to an Illuminati party? Or do you think it was just some high-end party with no relation to the Illuminati? I honestly have no clue, but let me know what you think about this whole thing.
Imagine finding your friend's decapitated body. When this woman did just that, what she screamed was heartbreaking. It was the 2nd of November 2023 in Santa Rosa, California. Luis Gustavo Arroyo Lopez had just been released from prison. He'd spent time behind bars for assault and weapons charges. On the day in question, his nan Elvia, aged 64, was at her home. Her neighbour Jessica recalled seeing Elvia greet her grandson at the door and be pleasantly surprised. However, Elvia would soon end up dead. Just hours after the neighbour Jessica witnessed the first initial interaction, she then saw a friend of Elvia's enter the property and run out panicked. She was shouting, "No head." Police raced to the scene where they found the grandmother decapitated in the house. After finding out that Lewis had been at the property at around the time of the killing, officers tracked him down and arrested him. It's believed that he murdered his nan in the house and left the scene with her head. The 24-year-old has actually pleaded guilty to killing his nan and will be back in court to be sentenced soon. A motive for the killing at the moment is unknown. Elvia's family stated she was a loving person and she adored so dearly all her grandchildren. She didn't deserve what was done to her.
Those who don't know, there's a lake in Cameroon, like the north part of it. So there was villagers living around that lake. There was a night where the villagers were all sleeping, of course. There was a loud noise coming from the lake, a loud explosion noise, and the water started to bubble up exactly like when you boil water. And when the bubble started to pop, it started creating a mist, which covered the whole area around the lake and stuff. The villager who was living on top of a hill saw the mist around the area, but he just didn't think anything of it and went back to sleep. He wakes up the next morning and
Everybody's dead.
all the animals are dead, all the cattle, livestock, even like little insects are dead. And what happened was there was an eruption underwater, which created a bunch of toxic gases to rise up like CO2, and it started to cover up the area, which ended up killing 1,700 to 2,000 people and around 3,500 animals.
They kind of remind me of the Hunger Games and Catching Fire, the second one.
I've never watched any Hunger Games, bro.
There's basically this one scene where the people who are running the games like release a poisonous fog or whatever, and like whenever you touch it, you either like die or get burned by it.
This man was caught on camera murdering his wife, and he only got 10 years in prison. Carrie Birmingham, who was 60 years old, shot his wife Patricia Birmingham, who was 48 years old. He shot her 3 times outside their home in Spring, Texas, and the couple had been arguing for about 30 minutes after Carrie allegedly discovered the affair his wife was having. This incident was captured on video by his wife Patricia, and in the disturbing video, Carrie can be seen walking in the driveway with a bathrobe on and a shotgun in his hand. Carrie can also be heard telling his wife, quote, "Okay, bye. You're going to meet Jesus. I hope it was worth it," end quote, before shooting her 3 times and killing her. Whatever you do, don't look up the video. It honestly is pretty disturbing, and I wouldn't recommend watching it. After doing this, Carrie was arrested and charged with murder, being held on a $200,000 bond, and recently in 2024, Carrie Birmingham pleaded guilty to the murder, but claimed he shot his wife in the heat of the moment. And despite the jury being all females, the woman sentenced Carrie to 10 years in prison, with parole eligibility in 5 years. Now I'm going to play a short clip from the video showing Carrie talking to Patricia before he shot her dead.
Video?
I'll pull it. I'm mad enough to pull it. Okay. All right, goodbye, Reese. Nice to know you. You go meet Jesus.
This woman murdered her husband in the most unusual way, and their son witnessed the whole thing. It was September 2016. Ramandeep Kaur Man from Derby was married to Sukhjit Singh. The pair had met in 2002 when Ramandeep was 17 and he was 20. They married each other a few years later and went on to have 2 sons. From the outside, the pair looked happy. However, things would soon come to a chilling end for the pair, witnessed entirely by their son. Now, Sukhjit's childhood best friend Gurpreet Singh was secretly having an affair with his wife. They'd been seeing each other for about a year behind his back when they hatched a murderous plan. It's believed that the motive behind this was to claim on his life insurance policy. On the 2nd of September, Ramandeep was cooking for her husband. His favourite dish was a biryani, and she knew this. She took some substances and laced his curry with them. She served it up to him, and after eating the curry, he became quite disoriented, quite sleepy, and quite confused. He headed up to bed, and his wife followed, along with his friend Gurpreet. Shortly after, Ramandeep held a pillow over his head. As he gasped for breath, it woke up the pair's eldest son, Arjun. The 9-year-old watched in horror as Gurpreet hit his dad over the head with a hammer. Ramandeep then cut his throat. Now, the child was obviously traumatized by witnessing all this, but bravely eventually gave evidence in court. The murderous pair never did get to claim the £2 million life insurance policy. Gurpreet was given life in prison and fined £3,000. Ramandeep has been sentenced to death but has appealed.
So recently I visited the other Epstein Island here in America, North Fox Island in Michigan. It is an island where there was a child pornography ring being run. It was a pedophile island where hundreds of children were victimized over the years, and the guy who was running this operation, Francis Sheldon, he disappeared from America. He flew off of the island on his private plane. He got tipped off by somebody, probably in law enforcement or the FBI, and he escaped all justice in this case. But it took us a lot of effort to get to this island. We explored all the remaining structures that were utilized back in those horrible, horrific deeds. And in this video that I'm posting this evening, we expose the truth about this situation and tell the horrifying details And it's stuff that haunts you. It's really, you guys have seen here on TikTok that I cover a lot of stories about pedophiles and sex trafficking, and I try my hardest to raise awareness about these issues, but being there in person and having talked to family members of victims in this case and everything that comes along with that, it's horrific. This stuff is really dark, but this is a very important video to me. So if this topic interests you, if you want to help me spread awareness about this, definitely go check out my new documentary. The link is going to be in my bio. It's called Pedophile Island on YT. I don't want to say the actual word in case I get blacklisted here. But yeah, this is the start of something huge on my YouTube channel. We have a lot of big announcements coming. We're almost at 1 million subscribers, so thank you all. And yeah, the North Fox ring I could talk about for weeks, and we start going into just immense detail, stuff that happened there, snuff films, different suspects, new things that people have told me about the active investigation that aren't public yet that we talk about in the video. So yeah, get ready. I will see you guys soon. It's going to be on my YT tonight.
Are you choosing bear or man? If you said man, this case might make you change your mind. Amy Moore was a beautiful and intelligent second-grade teacher from Illinois. She worked at the Grove Elementary School. She was a hard-working and loving mother to 3 boys, aged 11, 12 and 7. Amy and her ex Matthew had recently got divorced. Now, Amy was struggling to care for their sons all alone, and she was kind of living paycheck to paycheck. As I said, she was very hardworking, and she just was trying to make ends meet so that she could look after her family. Now, tellingly, Amy had to take out orders of protection against Matthew. Tragically, Amy would be failed by the system. On the 29th of May in Normal, Illinois, the unthinkable happened. Matthew forced entry into Amy's home in the early hours of the morning. He confronted her and then shot her multiple times, killing her, before turning the weapon on himself. Amy's brother, Thomas Burns, stated that there had been numerous concerning incidents over the years, and Amy had really tried to protect herself and her family by getting law enforcement involved. Tragically, her 3 sons are now left without a mother. Thomas has since started a GoFundMe, which I'll put in my bio, to help to support the children.
These are people who abused animals reacting to their sentences. This is Elizabeth James, and what she did to a dog is absolutely disturbing. Elizabeth James moved in with her boyfriend and his mother at a place in Tampa back in August 2022, and the mother had an 8-year-old husky named Maya who was perfectly healthy. But suddenly, Maya began showing signs of abuse. The family veterinarian treated the dog, who had punctures to her head and other injuries. Later, the family installed a hidden camera and caught Elizabeth James in the disturbing act. She was beating Maya with a rubber mallet. Elizabeth hit Maya with the mallet extremely hard 38 times, and even kicked and slammed Maya. Luckily, Maya survived, and she continues to go to the vet for ongoing treatment. You can find the video online of Elizabeth hitting and beating Maya, but I don't recommend watching it because it's obviously disturbing. Now, what I'm about to show you is Elizabeth James reacting to her sentence of 6 years in prison.
It was so violent and disturbing, we can hardly show any of it. It shows Elizabeth James using a rubber mallet to beat then-boyfriend's family dog, a husky named Maya.
What she did to Maya for 151 days, my dog lived in fear. It's a living thing, and she just abused her and abused her over and over.
The family began suspecting abuse after Elizabeth moved in with them in August 2022.
Not counting the ongoing abuse, August of 2020, the defendant struck Maya 38 times with the mallet and 26 additional strikes.
That's at least 64 hits. Prosecutors point out that's just what was caught on camera.
I think it's a miracle that Maya's alive.
I've never done anything like that. I've never put my hands on anybody. But that doesn't excuse it.
I would impose a sentence at the guidelines, 70.8 months in Florida State Prison.
That's more than 5 years behind bars. Lopez says it's a fitting sentence.
These are some bone-chilling facts about serial killers that will horrify you. Towards the end of Jeffrey Dahmer's killing spree, he said that his apartment was filled with so many of his victims' bodies that he started to run out of room and actually kept one of his victims' bodies in his bathtub and then showered over top of his body every day for over a month. Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, actually installed security alarms for a living at one point and actually installed multiple security alarms at homes of people that were only getting security alarms out of fear for the BTK killer. Serial killer Pedro Alonso Lopez only received 16 years in prison after pleading guilty to killing over 100 girls that were aged 9 to 12 years old. He was released despite promising to continue killing, and after his release, he went missing and was never seen again. That one is particularly terrifying for me. Serial killer Richard Chase only went into homes to kill people if their door was unlocked. He said that if a door was locked, he felt as if that meant he was unwelcomed. Serial killer Mac Ray Edwards had a job where he built highways in California, and he would bury his victims' bodies under where he was building these highways. To this day, most of his victims have never been found and are likely still under the highways in California. David Berkowitz, the son of Sam killer, has been eligible for parole, which means he's eligible to be released since 2002, but has asked them not to release him from prison for over 22 years. That one I'm grateful for. You can keep doing that. I'm okay with that. I know this video was a little bit different than like the typical like deep dives we do, but I found it really interesting. Let me know if you found it interesting, if you'd want to see more like it, like a part 2. Also, let me know if you'd want to see a deep dive on any of the serial killers we mentioned, because I'm definitely interested in discussing maybe David Berkowitz or Dennis Rader or any of them. Let me know what you think. Until then, I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.
This streamer killed his girlfriend while live streaming, and it's one of the most disturbing things ever streamed. Stanislav Reshnikov, who was on the left as a vlogger/streamer, was famously known as Stas Reflay, and he inflicted inhumane physical abuse on his pregnant girlfriend, Valentina Grigorieva, who was on the right when a viewer asked him to do so for merely $1,000 in his YouTube live video. Valentina's beating was followed by Stas stripping her naked and forcefully locking her outside of the house in sub-zero temperatures of December. Valentina kept on knocking on the door, telling him that she was going to die. After 15 minutes, Stas checked on Valentina as she stopped knocking on the door. He then found Valentina's unconscious, not breathing, and pale body. Stas made a failed attempt at resurrecting his girlfriend by giving her CPR. Eventually, he grew very scared of what he had done and called the paramedic team. In the footage, he can be seen carrying her back into his apartment trying to revive her. He is heard saying, "Velia, are you alive? My bunny, what's up with you? Velia, damn, you look like you are dead. Bunny, come on, tell me something. I'm worrying. Damn, I'm not feeling a heartbeat, guys. No pulse, she's pale. She is not breathing. Wake up, Velia. I love you. Wake up." The paramedic team then arrived and announced Valentina dead upon examination. Initially, she was assumed to die from hypothermia. However, the forensic team revealed that Valentina had died from a head injury inflicted upon her during domestic violence. The police arrested Stas soon after he killed his pregnant girlfriend for money, and he was given a sentence of 6 years by the court in 2021. But what do you think about this? This man literally put his pregnant girlfriend outside in freezing cold temperatures for $1,000 because one of his viewers donated it and told him to. This is absolutely gut-turning, and the live stream, if you ever decide to watch it, is extremely unnerving, especially when her lifeless body gets brought into the live stream. Just hearing him talk to her and knowing that she's dead is extremely unsettling.
The last thing that I have is sent by one of you guys.
This is a story time. To this day, I still haven't figured out what it was. This situation happened my sophomore year of high school. We lived in this house off of like I-85 in Georgia. A single house on that highway, and there was like a really dilapidated, beat up fucking house like next door to us. Our house had a long driveway. We had these sensors, so if anybody crossed by or any animals or any cars came into our driveway, we would know. It would beep around the whole house. One day my mom leaves. It was me and my brother alone.
Not a good sign.
It was my bed and the open window against it. By the headboard, it was just a window, and that window peered into the woods. I'm up about like 2-3 a.m. Brother's asleep, whole house is dark, and I decide, okay, let me just go play some Sims. I lay down on my bed. Let me remind you, windows behind me. I open up my laptop screen to go play some Sims.
My gosh!
And in that window, on my life, I could just see the blackness, and I saw a face, like a face clear as fucking day. I'm a skeptical person, but I could see a face. I jumped up. My flight or fight was like I've never felt that in my life, and I felt it that moment, and I ran to my brother's room.
Do not watch this video if you're claustrophobic. This is the dramatic moment that a man was rescued after 3 days at the bottom of the ocean. It was the 26th of May 2013. Harrison O'Keene was sat on the toilet of a boat. He was 29 years old and working as a cook on the boat in question. The boat was just off the coast of Nigeria, and Harrison was soon to be having some annual leave. That was when disaster struck. A wave crashed into the boat, flipping it instantly upside down. The whole boat went black. Harrison was hit on the head by the toilet and felt blood pouring off his head. Shortly after, he worryingly felt the boat hit the bottom of the sea. The small room he was in started filling up with water. Harrison's heart understandably began to race. He was being buried alive in a watery grave. Now, as the water levels started rising, Harrison could hear his colleagues crying out. Harrison remained in a small pocket of air that had formed in the room he was in. He ended up breaking off a small piece of metal from a vent and using that to break free from this small room. He was able to actually find a torch that worked, but it was still incredibly dark and confusing. He managed to find some food supplies to keep him going. Harrison stated he could hear his colleagues crying out, but gradually the cries got less and less frequent and quieter. That was until he was left in silence. He was hoping that his colleagues had managed to escape. He stayed still in the area that he was in, praying and thinking about his mum and his wife. He knew it would be really dangerous if he started to panic. Then, finally, after days out of the darkness came a small light. It was a diver. After 62 hours of being submerged, he was finally rescued. Now, he was seriously dehydrated at this point, but he had to be taken to a decompression chamber. This is an example of what one looks like, and because he'd been submerged for so long, he had so much nitrogen in his body, and it would be life-threatening for him to come out straight away. He had to spend 60 hours then in this claustrophobic chamber. Then, finally, Harrison was able to be reunited with his loved ones. Tragically, though, his colleagues had all drowned. Now, strangely, far from being terrified of the ocean, Harrison's actually now a professional diver. He really is an amazing example of human resilience.
This 12-year-old girl unalived her entire family so she could be with her 23-year-old boyfriend. Jasmine Richardson was a normal kid until she turned 11 years old. She started dressing in a darker aesthetic, liking some darker things. She would post on websites like MySpace and vampirefreaks.com, telling people she was 15 instead of 11. Because the thing about Jasmine is even though she was 11, she didn't look 11. She always kind of looked older than she actually was. She started sneaking out to hang out with her new older friends and would meet older guys. By the time that Jasmine was 12 years old, she was in a full-on relationship with this freak, 23-year-old Jeremy. And just so you know, just because she was lying about her age on social media, this guy was fully aware that his girlfriend was 12 years old, a literal preteen, and he would also tell people that he was a 300-year-old werewolf. So for context, we are dealing with a full-on freak. Jasmine's parents were horrified when they found out that their 12-year-old daughter was online telling people that she was older than she actually was and that she was dating a full-on adult. So they did their best to keep Jeremy away. Jasmine and Jeremy didn't want to be apart, and they thought that the only way that they could be together is if Jasmine's parents were no longer alive. What started out as jokes became real plans to not only unalive Jasmine's parents, but her 8-year-old brother as well. On April 22nd, 2006, Jasmine secretly let Jeremy into her home where he brutally unalived her parents. Jasmine's 8-year-old brother, Jacob, heard the entire thing while hiding in his room holding his lightsaber for protection. It's like heart-shattering. It's unclear who actually unalived 8-year-old Jacob because Jasmine and Jeremy blame each other for his death. Jasmine and Jeremy thought that they were soulmates, and now with her parents out of the picture, they were going to be together forever. But in reality, that was not the case. They were actually quickly brought to justice because they were bragging to anyone that would listen about what they had just done to her entire family. And of course, as soon as they were arrested, the soulmates turned on each other. Jeremy was sentenced to 3 life sentences, but due to Jasmine's age, she only served 6 years in a rehabilitation center and 4 years on probation. She was fully released into society in 2017 and has been out living in society free as a bird ever since under a new name. Actually, a lot of controversy in this case because of that, but what do you think? Do you think Jasmine is a victim, a child manipulated by a predator, or do you think if she's old enough to do the crime, she's old enough to do the time?
When a teenager disappeared with her fugitive boyfriend, people feared she was dead. Absolutely nobody expected what had actually happened. It was April 2023 and Caitlin Coons was living in a foster home in Ohio. She had a history of running away and again disappeared on the month in question. A huge search began for not only Caitlin but her 33-year-old boyfriend. This was Jonathan Jones. Now, Jonathan lived at home with his mum Nicole, who reportedly disapproved of their relationship. Caitlin was obviously way younger than Jonathan, so understandably Nicole was uncomfortable with this. The search for the pair was an anxious one. Jonathan was actually wanted on child endangerment charges and indecent images. Police also considered Caitlin to be an endangered child. Posts with the pair's faces on flooded social media as members of the public desperately tried to help. Many worried that Caitlin was in harm's way. The following month, though, some apparent good news. The couple had been tracked down, both alive at the Mexican border. However, things were far from over and the case would start to get darker than anyone could have imagined. While the couple were missing, social services had phoned police. They'd received a shocking text from Caitlin's phone. She told the staff she'd killed 2 people and was on the run. It transpired that on the 18th of April, Caitlin had run away from the foster home. She'd made her way to Jonathan's mum's home with Jonathan. Now, Caitlin had resentment towards Jonathan's mum, Nicole. She felt that she was interfering with them being together. Caitlin gave Jonathan an ultimatum: kill his mum or she would kill her. She told him he had 5 hours to take action. He actually didn't, so eventually Caitlin took matters into her own hands. Caitlin bludgeoned Nicole to death with a rock and strangled her. The couple then went to the shop and bought bin bags and cleaning supplies. They horrifically both drove and got some food and ate the food together while Nicole's remains were in the boot of the car. They then drove the remains to some large bins by some apartments. Now, tragically, Nicole's remains have never been recovered and are presumably in landfill somewhere. Caitlin and Jonathan both pleaded no contest to aggravated murder and abuse of a corpse. They were both sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. Caitlin argued that she did not send the text that admitted to 2 murders.
If your wife is missing, why would you Google how to dispose of a woman's body? 39-year-old Anna Walsh was last seen leaving her Cohasset, Massachusetts home around 4 a.m. on New Year's Day. There hasn't been any cell phone or bank activity since that day, and she hasn't been seen or heard from again. Anna shares the home with her husband Brian and their 3 kids. Just 1 day after she disappeared, Brian was caught on security footage at Home Depot buying $450 worth of cleaning supplies, maps, and a tarp. Anna wasn't reported missing until January 4th from both her husband and her employer after she failed to show up to work. When investigators searched the home, they found a broken knife and blood in the Walsh's basement. During the investigation, authorities were sent to a waste facility in Peabody, which is about an hour away from the family home. During their search, they found a hacksaw, a hatchet, and a bloody rug. Also found was a garbage bag containing blood as well as human tissue, all believed to be connected to Anna's disappearance. After looking into Brian, police discovered that after Anna went missing, he Googled, quote, how to dispose of a 115-pound woman's body, end quote. Just a few days ago, Brian was arrested and charged with misleading the police investigation into the disappearance of his wife, and he has since pleaded not guilty. He's currently being held on a $500,000 bail. This is not the first time that Brian has had run-ins with the law. In 2021, Brian pleaded guilty to charges related to an attempt to scam someone in LA using fake Andy Warhol paintings. Because of that, Brian was placed on home confinement, which was still taking place up until his recent arrest. Adding to that, he was also at the center of an ongoing dispute over his late father's will. His family members accused him of destroying the document and wrongly taking over his father's estate. According to Anna's mom, Anna had texted her on Christmas and said, quote, "Please mama, come tomorrow," end quote. Anna's mom said that she and Brian loved each other, but this seemed to allude to some problems, although Anna didn't mention exactly why she wanted her mom to come so urgently. According to her, Anna also recently mentioned her frustration with Brian's home confinement. This forced her to temporarily live alone in a Washington, D.C. home that Anna also owned. Anna worked a lot in Washington, D.C. and would often visit the home. Anna reportedly tried calling her mom around midnight on the night she went missing, as well as once more an hour later, but her mom was sleeping and missed the call. Right after, she also tried calling her sister and a friend, but they also missed the call. A friend of the Walshes has come forward and stated that he spent New Year's Eve with a couple and has said that there was no indication of any tragedy or trouble. But it's now been 10 days since Anna was last seen. This is an ongoing investigation, so hopefully more answers will come to light soon.
This woman was left with no choice but to kill her husband to save her son. Tina Tolbert was living in Michigan. She'd met her partner, Miłosz, when she was 25. Now, she was fairly inexperienced in relationships, and Miłosz really love-bombed her. They soon moved in together despite her family having serious concerns. They knew the red flags and could see that he was controlling her, but Tina was already under his spell. Now, he started isolating her from her family and friends. He would brainwash her into thinking that her loved ones didn't care about her. One evening, after an argument, he flew into a rage and beat her up. Although she did call police, she was too embarrassed and ashamed to press any charges. Now, Miłosz knew that Tina wanted to leave him, and he threatened her that if she did, he would kill her and her family. He ended up leaving his job and telling Tina that she had to support him financially. He began to regularly her, and when she resisted, he would get even more violent. Eventually, one of these attacks resulted in a pregnancy. Tina gave birth to baby Philip in 2011, and he was diagnosed as autistic. He was non-verbal, and Tina just knew that he was her reason for continuing with life. She had a strong desire to love him and keep him safe. Meanwhile, Miłosz was pressuring Tina to marry him. She admitted that their wedding day was the most unhappy day of her life. She was continuously having to hide her black eyes from people. The marriage ended up only making the violence worse. Now, this went on for years, and when Philip turned 7, Tina was due to go and see some friends. When she returned, Miłosz attacked her. He swung a chair at her so hard that it snapped her arm. The bone was sticking out of the flesh. Now, he refused to take her to hospital until she drank some alcohol and agreed to pretend that she did it when she was drunk. She was too scared to decline, and so she went to the hospital, they believed the story, and then they sent her home with him. When they returned home, the attacks continued. He would choke her and slam her head into furniture. Now, one of these attacks was so brutal that it actually left a dent in the fridge where he slammed her head into it. Then things eventually came to a dramatic conclusion. Miłosz bundled Philip and Tina into the car one day and said they were going to run some errands. He took a gun with him and told them, "You're going to die today." When Tina asked why, he said that he hated them both. When they returned from running the errands, he put the gun on the top of the fridge, and Tina saw her opportunity. She grabbed the gun from the top of the fridge and hid it near her. Miłosz confronted her, and she grabbed the weapon. He walked towards her grinning and said that she had no choice but to either kill him or he was going to kill them both. She took the gun and fired, and then she rang police and told them she'd killed her husband. When she was arrested, she had broken ribs, a torn spleen, a broken arm, and a fractured wrist, to name just a few of the injuries. She told officers that she would plead guilty if it meant that she could get back out to her son quicker. She spent 20 months in prison for voluntary manslaughter. When she was released from prison, there was a cheering crowd outside, including her son.
In 1976 and 1977, Mark Stebbins, Jill Robinson, Christine Mihalik, and Timothy King were abducted, held for days, and murdered. Their killer, known as the Oakland County Child Killer, has never been caught. Now sources are telling 7 Action News that a new suspect has emerged, and it's someone who is still alive.
I just didn't believe it was her until I went to the morgue to see her. My dad couldn't even identify her. All I know is I want to get a hold of the guy that did it. for whoever did it, because I love my sister.
Footprints here in the snow on the steps and fingerprints here on the door frame are among the physical evidence uncovered by the State Police Crime Lab. Right now they're looking for a man believed to be anywhere from 19 to 25 years of age, 5'10" to 6 feet tall, very slender with a prominent nose and dark, long, wavy hair.
It all began on February 2nd, 1976. Everyone thought it was an isolated case, but the murder of Mark Stebbins of Ferndale remains unsolved. His body turned up 2 weeks after he disappeared in a parking lot in Southfield. The 12-year-old had left his mother and brother at a social function, never to be seen alive again.
Not a day goes by, where you don't wonder and, worry about it, the whys and the wherefores, how long he had been dead before his body was found, who it was.
Based on the investigation to this point, Sergeant, what are your chances of catching the individual or individuals before an incident like this occurs again?
I wouldn't be able to put it in percentage-wise. There'd be no way for me knowing this, and I don't think anybody could put it in a percentage.
Tonight, our look into the cold case of the Oakland County child killer takes us on a road trip to North Fox Island in northern Michigan. Police were investigating a child pornography ring on the island back in 1977. Now, just months after 3 Oakland County children were killed and just weeks before another, Timothy King, was abducted.
The pornography operation was run by a man with ties to Metro Detroit, and police were anxious to find out if he was involved in those serial killings.
Yeah, one theory in the Oakland County child killer case is that it was part of a group of wealthy pedophiles who were trafficking in child pornography and groomed underage kids who became victims. A massive investigation led to 2 people, Frank Sheldon of Grosse Pointe, who owned much of North Fox Island, and Jerry Richards, a teacher in Port Huron who recruited young boys to fly to the island on field trips.
I remember getting on the plane, I was so excited. Me and Mike, and there's 2 other kids. I think one was a grade above us, and one was a grade below us, if I remember correctly. And I remember landing. I remember getting our stuff, getting our cabin, and, within an hour, we were naked on the beach. That's just how it was. If you live on an island, this is how they do it. And there's cameras, a lot, all over the place, really.
It's the case that's haunted Metro Detroit for more than 3 decades. 4 children abducted and killed along the Woodward Corridor in the mid-70s by the infamous Oakland County child killer.
Christopher Brian Bush was a convicted pedophile who lived in Bloomfield Hills. The 7 investigators were the first to reveal Bush's autopsy report after he allegedly killed himself inside his family's Bloomfield Township home.
Hammer coined the phrase, "You can't make this stuff up," might have known the story of real-life boogeyman, Albert Fish. A slight, elderly man with grey hair, no one suspected the kindly single father of being sadistic child murderer and cannibal.
I've covered countless true crime cases, but this one has to be one of the worst. This is the case of Sylvia Likens, who was a 16-year-old girl who, along with her younger sister Jenny, was left in the care of Jerude Benisweski by her parents. Jerude was a single mother with several children of her own. She agreed to take care of the Liken sisters in exchange for a small amount of money every week. The Liken parents were carnival workers and believed their daughters would be safe with Jerude. But that was far from the truth. Things took a horrific turn when Jerude and her children began to subject Sylvia to prolonged physical and emotional abuse. She was physically beaten, starved, and subjected to various forms of torture. Jerude's children and some neighborhood kids also participated in the abuse. Sylvia was kept locked in the basement where she endured unimaginable suffering. Jerude and the children not only beat Sylvia, but they also forced her to write degrading statements all over her own body, including phrases like, "I'm a prostitute and I'm proud of it." Sylvia was also burned with cigarettes, had her head shaved, and was often deprived of food and water. This abuse continued for months. On one occasion, as the family ate supper, Jerude, Paula, and a neighborhood boy named Randy force-fed Sylvia a hot dog overloaded with condiments, including mustard, ketchup, and spices. Sylvia vomited as a result and was later forced to eat her own vomit. On another occasion, Paula, who was Jerude's daughter, beat Sylvia in the face with such force that she broke her own wrist. Later, Paula used the cast on her wrist to further beat Sylvia. Giroud would also occasionally force Jenny, who was her younger sister, to strike her and beat her. And if she did not comply, they would just beat her. Several of Giroud's children's classmates frequently visited the house to both physically and verbally torment Sylvia. And with Giroud's active encouragement, these neighborhood children and her own routinely beat Sylvia, sometimes even using her as a practice dummy in violent judo sessions. Also lacerating her body and burning her with lit cigarettes over 100 times. They also severely injured her genitals. To entertain Giroud and her teenage accomplices, Sylvia was forced at one point to strip naked in the family living room and masturbate with a glass Pepsi Cola bottle in their presence. And this was all for the enjoyment of this woman right here. And due to the increase in the frequency and the brutality of the torture and mistreatment of Sylvia, she gradually became incontinent, which is the uncontrolled leakage of urine. She was then denied any access to the bathroom, being forced to wet herself. And as a form of punishment, Giroud threw Sylvia into the basement and tied her up. Here, Sylvia was kept naked, rarely fed, and frequently deprived of water. Occasionally, she was tied to the railing of the basement stairs with her feet barely touching the ground. On October 25th, Sylvia attempted to escape from the basement after overhearing a conversation, after overhearing Giroud say they were just going to leave her to die in the basement. Sylvia attempted to flee to the front door, however, due to her extensive injuries and general weakness, Giroud caught her before she could escape the property. And on the morning of October 26, 1965, Sylvia Likens tragically succumbed to her injuries and died in the basement. Her cause of death was a combination of severe malnutrition, physical trauma, and the overall abuse she endured. Her body was found with numerous injuries, including broken bones and extensive scarring, and the autopsy showed that there was more than 150 wounds across her body. Giroud was found guilty of first-degree murder and she was sentenced to life in prison. But somehow she was released in 1985 on parole, which is just sickening. She deserves to be underneath the prison. This is just absolutely horrifying. The Sylvia Likens case is a heartbreaking and disturbing true crime story that continues to captivate and horrify people to this day. There's a lot more I could talk about in this case, so if you want a part 2, let me know. Rest in peace to Sylvia Likens, and I can't believe this case.
This stunning cheerleader vanished on holiday. It would take another shocking murder before her killer would face any kind of justice. In May 2005, Natalie Holloway was in the mood to celebrate. The 18-year-old had just graduated from high school and was heading to Aruba with her classmates for the holiday of a lifetime. 124 other seniors joined Natalie in Aruba. On the 30th of the month, they were in a nightclub. It's believed that they left around 1:30 in the morning, and Natalie tried to get a lift back to the Holiday Inn. Concerningly, she never showed up at the airport the next day to get her return flight home. Her packed luggage and her passport were both found in her room at the Holiday Inn. Now, this obviously rang alarm bells. What on earth had happened to Natalie after she left that nightclub? Her mum and stepdad were panicked and flew to Aruba. There was one prime suspect, a male that Natalie had been seen with getting into a car for a lift back to the Holiday Inn. This was 17-year-old Jordan van der Sloot. A friend of Natalie's confirmed that they had actually been speaking to Jordan that evening. They'd seen him several times. Now, what they didn't know and what would be revealed later is he had somewhat of a reputation in the local area. He was known to be predatory to tourists. Now, when police questioned him, he insisted that he and 2 other males had dropped Natalie off at her hotel at around 2 a.m. Now, Jordan claimed to police that he'd actually dropped Natalie off and seen her talking with 2 security guards. Police then arrested the 2 security guards on suspicion of kidnap, but soon released them. They knew it was in fact Jordan that they needed to investigate. Jordan was arrested along with the 2 other males from the car, the Calpo brothers, aged 18 and 21. They were all questioned, and suddenly the trio's stories all began to change and contradict each other. Now, this was obviously a massive red flag, and then Jordan's story changed massively. He stated that as Natalie left the vehicle, she slipped and hit her head, and he left her injured on the side of the road. He insisted that she was alive at this point. Now, frustratingly, with no body, police were at somewhat of a dead end. The 3 men, frustratingly, were set free. An agonizing ordeal ensued for Natalie's loved ones. There were multiple arrests over the years, but frustratingly, due to lack of evidence, people kept being released. There were also multiple theories flying around about potentially Natalie being disposed of by drug runners. Tip-offs would consistently lead to dead ends, and Natalie's family suffered the agony of having so much false hope. Then in February 2010, Jordan's dad died. Jordan then sent an email to Natalie's family stating, "My father's dead, I have nothing to hide. For $250,000, I will tell you what happened to Natalie." The family ended up actually paying him $25,000 initially, and stated that if he led them to where he claimed that Natalie was, and Natalie was there, they'd give him the rest of the money. He led investigators to an area, and it turned out to be a lie. This, however, enabled the FBI to actually arrest him with extortion. Sickeningly, he would later admit to wanting to get back at Natalie's family. He stated, quote, "Her parents have been making my life tough for 5 years." Now, tragically, before he could be arrested for this crime, he fled to Peru. This trip would prove to be fatal. On the 30th of May 2010, exactly 5 years to the day that Natalie vanished, Jordan met Stephanie Flores. She was just 21 years old. The two visited a casino before heading back to Jordan's hotel room. Chillingly, Stephanie was reported missing shortly after. 48 hours later, she was found dead in Jordan's hotel room with a broken neck. It transpired that Stephanie had discovered incriminating evidence on Jordan's computer. This linked him to Natalie's murder. When Stephanie found this, she confronted Jordan. He then murdered her too. He was given 28 years in prison for Stephanie's killing. Jordan would eventually admit to killing Natalie when he made sexual advances to her that she refused. He admitted to kicking her hard in the face after she kicked him in the crotch to get him off her. He said he then hit her with a cinder block. He then claimed to have dragged her body to the ocean. However, we obviously can't 100% trust Jordan. We know he has a track record of lying. As he took a plea deal, frustratingly, he may actually never be prosecuted for Natalie's murder. She was declared legally dead in 2012. Now, heartbreakingly, her remains have never been found, and she's never been able to have a proper burial. Now, I'd really recommend watching the documentary series, The Disappearance of Natalie Holloway. It's an absolutely fascinating and really gripping documentary series. This isn't an ad, it's just the fact that me and my friend watched the whole documentary series in one evening because we were so hooked on it. The case and what the family went through in the search for justice for Natalie is just so extensive. I haven't been able to really do it justice in this video.
This 23-year-old TikToker has just been found guilty of murder. This story is just insane. So, hi, I'm Meg. I talk about true crime. Let's get into it. At the time of the crime, Mahek Buhari was 23 years old. She had nearly 130,000 TikTok followers, 45,000 on Instagram, and thousands on YouTube as well. She made videos on makeup, lifestyle, fashion, stuff like that, and she was beginning to make a name for herself on multiple platforms. Her mother featured in a few of her videos, and they seem to be really close. Her mother's name was Ansreen, and she is 46 years old. This whole situation began around 3 years ago when her mother started a secret affair with a younger man. The man's name was Saqib, and he was only 19, I believe, when this affair started, and she was like in her 40s. He quickly fell in love with Ansreen. Sorry if I'm saying any of these names wrong, they're kind of difficult for me to pronounce. But she was married, and to her this was just like a fun little affair on the side. She had been married to her husband for over 20 years, and he did not know about this affair. The only person who knew about the affair was Mahek, the TikToker. Saqib really wanted a real relationship, and he wanted to woo her, so he spent thousands on her. It said somewhere that he spent around £2,000 trying to impress her. Fast forward to 2022, Ansreen wanted to end this relationship. He was getting pretty obsessed with her, so she just wanted nothing to do with it anymore. After she tried ending things, things got pretty intense really quick. Saqib started threatening her because he had certain videos and pictures of them together, if you know what I mean. He was blackmailing her, being like, if you leave me, I will send these to your son and your husband. And obviously she did not want these intimate moments being shown to her son, and she did not want her husband finding out either, because that would be bad. Like I said before, Mahek was the only person who knew about this affair, so her mother turned to her for help. She turned to her 23-year-old daughter. The two spoke about it over WhatsApp, which is just mistake number one. If you're gonna try to like take someone out, you know, call about it, don't text it. There's a text from Mahek to her mother saying, I'll soon get him jumped by guys and he won't know what day it is. So it doesn't necessarily mention murder, but it does, you know, prove that she wanted to do something. Mahek, alongside her mother, decided to arrange a meeting with Saqib to give him back the $2,000 he spent on Ansreen. 11th of February 2022, the police get a frantic phone call from Saqib. Here's a transcript of the call if you want to fully read it. You can pause now. TikTok just deleted the other half of this video and I've just finished the makeup, so I'm just going to continue the story. In this phone call, Saqib is frantically trying to get the police to help him because he's being followed very closely. And he claimed in the phone call that the people following him were wearing balaclavas, which are like masks kind of. And he says, they're trying to ram me off the road. They're trying to kill me. I'm going to die. He was not alone in the car. He was with his friend, his childhood friend called Mohammed. As the police were trying to get him some help, the phone call ended after he screamed and there was a huge crashing noise. Saqib's car was rammed off the road by another car off of the A64 dual carriageway. The car immediately was engulfed in flames and both the young men lost their lives. All because a woman didn't want her husband to know that she was cheating on him. Well, he knows now because the police obviously found out about it. The bodies were so badly burnt that they had to be identified using dental records. It was pretty clear that this wasn't an accident because of the 999 call he made earlier. Just so you guys know, this is in England. I feel like I've not mentioned that yet. I'm not really sure how the police actually found out who was involved. Like, that whole part was not anywhere that I could personally find. But they ended up at Mahek's house and she claimed that she was home all evening. She later then changed her story, saying that she had been there, but she wasn't involved at all. In fact, in this video footage you're seeing right now, her car was the one with the red arrow. And her mother, Ansreen, was also there with her. The police confiscated Mahek's phone and asked for the password, and she gave them the wrong password, which is like sketchy as hell. When they asked her why she gave them the wrong code, she was like, oh, I was stressed out and gave you the wrong code, but it's really because she probably didn't want them reading the text messages, saying she was going to get Saqib jumped. Mahek actually said in court that she had lied to the police multiple times, but her, alongside everybody else involved, were claiming that they were innocent, that they had nothing really to do with it. It was all an accident. But after the trial, they were all found to be guilty. Every single one of the drivers involved. I think that there was one that was let go, but I don't actually really know the situation behind that because the information is not very good at the moment because it's all very new, so it's kind of hard to find what I need. I don't think that the sentencing has been done yet because I can't actually find a number of years that her and her mother and everyone involved will be in prison for, but they're definitely going to prison. I think I read somewhere that the sentencing will be done in September, but I'm not 100% sure on that information. Like I said, it's very scarce. And that's the entire case from what I could find. It's insane to me that those two young men lost their lives because of this. Like, it's so ridiculous. It's creepy because her TikTok account is still, like, up. And it's weird to look at, like, her videos. She probably had no idea that her last video was going to be her last video. I would love to hear what you guys have to say about this case / what case you want me to do next. I am so mad that TikTok deleted that half of the video because the actual process was really cool into doing this makeup. But I hope that you guys still enjoyed the video regardless. I'm a little angry about it. When you're watching this video, I will be on a plane. I'm going to Canada for 3 weeks to visit some family. I have pre-recorded some videos, so you will still have your true crime, don't worry. If I have a free day, I will definitely film another true crime video while I'm in Canada, but that really depends on like what I'm doing every day. It would be kind of cool to do it in like a different setup. I don't know. I'm literally filming the pre-recorded videos after this one, so I'm literally gonna have to take off my makeup, film the other video, take off my makeup, film the other video, and my skin is not going to be happy. That's everything for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!
This is the disturbing case of the child who killed a child. In July 2018, 6-year-old Alicia McPhail was abducted from her bed. She'd been staying with her grandparents in the Isle of Bute. She'd gone to sleep watching Peppa Pig, and no one had any idea of the horrors that would unfold that evening. Meanwhile, 16-year-old Aaron Campbell was drinking with friends at his house. Aaron apparently became upset in the night because he had been arguing with his mum. He had had a challenging upbringing involving physical and emotional abuse. Aaron decided that evening he wanted to get some substances to smoke from a couple that he knew. The couple in question were Alicia's dad, Robert, and his girlfriend. They'd been known to sell substances to Aaron previously, but he could not get hold of them. Intending to go and steal them off them, Aaron armed himself with a knife. He headed to Robert's house where he lived with his parents and girlfriend. This was obviously where Alicia was staying that evening. When he arrived at the house, he noticed the 6-year-old sleeping in her bed and took the opportunity to snatch the poor defenseless young child. Disgustingly, he carried her to a secluded location, SA'd her, and then killed her. He then disposed of his clothes in the sea. At 6 a.m. the next day, Alicia's grandparents woke up to discover that the little girl was missing. They straight away alerted police and locals. When the family asked Aaron to keep an eye out for the little girl, he texted them back saying, "Oh damn, I'm sure she's not went too far." A local man soon discovered Alicia's lifeless body around 15 minutes away from her house. Along with a lot of the local community, Aaron's mum actually checked her CCTV of her house. She was hoping that this would help with the investigation, and it definitely did. She saw her son leaving and returning from the house that night, and she handed the evidence over to police. Aaron was arrested, and it was discovered that the clothes that he'd abandoned on the beach did actually match with his DNA.
The story of this American female serial killer will make your hair stand up. As if her crimes are not horrific enough, she earned the nickname the Giggling Granny. How creepy is that? Nanny Doss was raised on a farm by a very controlling father, and one of the few joys that she had in life was sneaking into her mother's room and reading her romance novels, and she would daydream about the day that she'd be swept off her feet and have her happily ever after. And she got married to her first husband at the age of 16, and it was a miserable marriage. The couple had 4 daughters together, 2 of which mysteriously died of food poisoning, at which point the husband took one remaining daughter and fled because he was scared to death of Nanny. The remaining infant baby named Florine was left with Nanny, and Nanny picked up and married somebody new. Now this man was an alcoholic, but despite that, they were married 16 years and raised Florine together. This is where the bloodbath really begins. Nanny was in the room right after her daughter Melvina had given birth to her second grandchild, and while Melvina was still loopy from the labor drugs and she was exhausted, she could have sworn that she saw Nanny stick a hat pin in the baby's head. Melvina kind of passed out and went back to sleep, but when she came to, she started asking her family members, did Nanny have a hat pin and stick the baby in the head? And the family regretted to inform Melvina that the baby had in fact died, and yes, they did see Nanny holding a hat pin. However, the doctors couldn't give a positive explanation for the baby's death. The death of the baby absolutely shattered Melvina and her husband, and they started fighting and drifting apart, and Melvina started dating a soldier named Robert, who Nanny did not approve of. And one night when Melvina was out of the house and Robert was left alone with Nanny, Robert mysteriously died, and Nanny received $500 in life insurance that she had taken out on Robert a couple weeks earlier. Not long after that, Nanny's husband forced himself on her, and she didn't like that, so she put rat poison in his corn whiskey jar, and he died that night. Nanny married her third husband only 3 days after meeting him, and he died shortly after this of heart failure. She picked up some life insurance, bought some land, and built a new house. Her late third husband left behind a mother and a bedridden sister who also died shortly after. At this point, Nanny burned the house down, took that life insurance money, and moved on. Then Nanny landed a fourth husband, and at this point her mom moved in with him. She found out that her husband was cheating, so she poisoned him to death, and for good measure, she poisoned her mom to death too. Then she married her a fifth man named Samuel Doss, who was very disapproving of the romance novels that she loved to read. He went to the hospital one night with flu-like symptoms and was diagnosed with a severe digestive tract infection. He was treated and sent home. And a few days later, he showed up dead. The doctors were very suspicious of this, so they did an autopsy and found enough arsenic in his system to kill 20 men. Nanny was arrested shortly after this and confessed to killing 4 of her husbands, her mother-in-law, her mother, her sister-in-law, and yes, sadly, even the baby with the hat pin.
This case made me terrified to go to the cinema. This is the case of the horror in Screen 9. James Holmes was raised in California. His mum was a nurse and his dad was a scientist. From a young age, he was experiencing night terrors and allegedly actually tried to take his own life when he was just 11 years old. He was apparently obsessed with guns and weapons and had dreamed of becoming a mass murderer. Between May and July 2012, he legally bought 4 guns. Background checks were conducted and he was allowed the weapons. He also bought spike strips, which, if you don't know, pop the tyres of cars if they chase after you. On July the 19th, just hours before tragedy would unfold, James mailed his notebook to his psychiatrist. Inside the notebook, James detailed his plans to kill. The notebook was actually discovered later on undelivered. Just prior to entering a cinema in Aurora, James rang a crisis line to tell them about his plans to kill. However, the call was disconnected after just 9 seconds. At the midnight showing of The Dark Knight Rises, CCTV captures James walking into the cinema. He walks into Screen 9, props open the door, and then walks back out again. Shockingly, he goes to his car and gets guns out and gas canisters. He re-entered the screen at about 12:38 p.m. and set off 2 gas canisters. When he entered Screen 9 again, he immediately opens fire on the audience, instantly killing 10 people. 2 others later died in hospital from their injuries. An additional 70 people were injured. This was an absolutely packed out cinema. James also shot at people as they scrambled to exit the screen. His youngest victim was a 6-year-old girl. Witnesses said this all unfolded as there was actually a gunfight on the screen, and initially they all thought it was special effects and just part of the film. Police were actually on the scene very quickly after the first 911 call. James surrendered to the police and was arrested in the car park. He was apparently very calm when he was arrested and told police that he had booby-trapped his apartment. When police investigated his apartment, this was found out to be true. He was sentenced to 12 consecutive life sentences.